that?
It was some beautiful light outside, and so all the plants. You can't really see the plants indoor. You can see the silhouettes of the plants
Mhm.
indoors, but you're really looking outside, and there's some beautiful colors outside. But they're all safely in. I even got. I swear that Chef Flora, and you can see way over on the right. Um, it's 8 feet tall, um, and it's got to weigh 100 pounds
Mhm.
at least. I was dragging that thing in, one
It's a
stair,
two-person job.
one step at a time up the back steps, and then put it on a rug and slide it across the room, well, through the kitchen, through the dining room, and into the living room, and there it
Wow.
is. And
Wow.
but that's my Christmas tree.
Yes.
As you
Yes,
know,
that's your
that is
Christmas
what I
tree.
use. I'll decorate it with Christmas lights. It used to be that our setup here was over at that end, and that end, and the Chef Fleur was right behind me, and you could see the Christmas lights at the
Yeah.
holiday season. So there you go. Hey,
Well, my my uh
uh,
my philodendron that grew to like is still occupying half of my kitchen. I haven't figured out where that's
where
going yet.
and that's the problem when you bring plants indoors. Where the
Hmm.
heck do you put? I'm negotiating with Kathleen about plants that we can put upstairs. Okay, most of them are down here, and you
Look
can
at
see.
this. Do you have a skylight up there or just in the living room?
No, but it's the second floor and it's a southern exposure, so there's a lot of light there. However, it is her office, so she gets to say what's in there, and she needs space to walk around because she has her Fitbit and she does her steps, and sometimes she's not you got one of those things too. You got one that you could probably actually read. The thing I don't understand. Okay, what I don't understand about Fitbits is how tiny the writing is on it. You can't see anything. Oh well.
There's different kinds. We'll
All
talk
right.
about that after the show. People are
Well,
here for gardening.
yeah, they are for gardening and for the environment. And today we're talking COP26 or COP26. That's in the second hour. But before then, we're talking about GreenTown Rockford, which happens to dovetail nicely with what's going on at Bell Bowl Prairie. We will have Brad Roos on the program from Sustain Rockford and talk about what they're doing there. The event is this Friday. So get ready for that, and we'll tell you how you can participate if you want to participate. But before then, we have a friend of the show who has been on our program a number of times. He is, I don't know, he's a pretty fancy guy. Actually, is that whose phone? Is that mine, or is that?
No, it's mine. I'm muting the mic.
Uh, Thank you, Peggy. Hi, Alan Armitage. Oh, I like that. Would you do that
I
again?
like that.
Do that again with your
Yeah,
glasses.
that's my best look. You know,
That was great. That was right on cue. That is Alan,
right on cue.
Dr. Alan Armitage. Should I have put the doctor in front of the Alan
No,
Armitage? No? Okay.
you should not have.
He is a professor emeritus of horticulture at the University of Georgia. He's a writer, speaker, world renowned, written 1,700 books uh,
Last year.
just last year. Right. Very good, Peggy. And you're famous when you have your own app. Um, and by the way, I have this here because I wanted to make sure that I could hold this up. We're not talking about this, but you need to
Yep.
if you care about. In fact, let me go to the wide shot for me just for a second. Okay, here we go. And here's the book. If you care at all about gardening, if you're a serious gardener, you want to get Herbaceous Perennial Plants Edition 4,
Hmm.
a treatise, as he says, on their identification, culture, and garden attributes by Dr. Alan M. Armitage. So I assume that.
I've got the app opened up right here.
All right, Peggy's got the, we got you covered,
Boy,
Alan.
you
All
got me
right.
What are your
covered. I'm really
groupies, Alan?
excited.
Uh, Unfortunately, we're not going to start by talking about gardening, although we're going to get to it because I'm not going to let you get away without answering a few gardening questions. And I hope that some of our viewers will send some our way as well, because this is the guy. This is one of the guys you certainly want to talk to. But Allan has a new book out, and it is this book, Tales of Big John and Other Creatures. And what's the subtitle? Because I need to put my glasses on to read that, Peggy.
Extraordinary Stories of an Ordinary Family.
There we go. And she has a copy because Allan likes Peggy better than he likes me. And I'm not sure
Let's
why.
see. He autographed it.
Look at it. It's autographed as well. And we have the link at my blog post. Go to MikeNowak.net, MikeNowak.net, and we tell you how to order the book. And you promised folks, Allan, that you will sign each individual copy if they want it.
So here's what we're going to do, Peggy, Mike, and I'm glad, Peggy, you got the book finally. Mike, nothing personal. No,
Sure.
We're going to get you a couple of other books as well. But for anybody, and we're going to talk, and thank you, by the way, both of you, for inviting me to speak with you and your group. We're going to talk a little bit about getting books, and certainly I'm really excited about this last one. You also mentioned the perennial book, and just for what it's worth, if you don't want to use the big book, i.e., if you find it it's a little bit too much, this one has just come out recently as well. And
all right, now you better hold on there so I can get the full screen.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh no, that's okay. You're welcome to do that. Here we go. All right,
there
now
you go.
a little more. There we go.
And this has got lots of color, lots of pictures, and that's also available on the website and through you, Mike. Thank you. But anyway, for those of you who are interested in books, you go through Mike or go through my website, allanarmitage.net. And Mike, and as much as I love Peggy, I said to Mike, if any of your crazy viewers, as a bonus for putting up with us, want to buy a book, go to the website and just put in the word Mike, M-I-K-E, and you'll get free shipping. That's just for you guys.
Oh,
right now.
Now I'm going to have to add that. I got to add that to the blog now when we're done with this. Thanks for giving me more work to do, Allan. Okay, I appreciate that.
There you go. Well, I'm happy to help you out, Mike. And but
that means go to your website, go to allanarmitage.net and order it. Don't go to those big booksellers online. Go to you.
Well, you can get it on Amazon and all that stuff, but if you buy a book,
we don't use that word, Allan. We don't use that word.
Yeah, really.
Okay, the other booksellers, if you go through me and the website, I will immediately email you and say, would you like this personalized to you, to your mother, to whatever? And of course, I'll sign it. So you get a little bit of extra. Even though the value of the book goes down after I sign it, you get a little bit of extra once you go through the website, allanarmitage.net.
Fantastic. So go to allanarmitage.net. That's what I advise you to do, because it's right there on the homepage, the link to it. You click on it, and then you can. But however, we have to tell people why they want to get this book. I mean,
yes,
because as I mentioned, it is not about gardening at all. Although, you refer to your trials and tribulations trying to go from Canada to Michigan State University to the University of Georgia, and become
back to Canada,
and the world-renowned author of so many different books. What I wrote on my blog post is that you can tell even from herbaceous perennial plants that you like having fun, and you're not necessarily this is a serious book, but you're not a serious guy, and that comes out in full force in Big John. It is a story of your life and your family and your kids and your wife and your dogs and everything else you can think of, weddings and catastrophes and supermarkets and on and on.
Mike, your mic is doing something weird.
What's that? I'm hearing a little weird stuff here.
Yeah.
I'll back off and just see if that. I have no idea why it's doing that. Okay.
Well,
yeah, supermarkets and everything else. Yeah.
Well, the thing about this book, it's so very different than what people are used to. They're stories of children growing up. They happen to be our children, and the only difference between the stories of your children and my children is that I wrote them down at the time. So this book is actually 50 years in the making. And, you know, when I'm talking about my daughter who is now, I want to tell you how old she is. She has two wonderful kids, and one of them's in college, put it that way. But, you
Older
know,
than they were when you wrote the stories down.
absolutely. But when she was born, she was 2 feet tall. And so the whole thing about you know, what do you do with a 2 foot tall kid who's almost as tall as you are? So, you know, stories like that. And I hope that everybody just has a good, lots of smiles, even a laugh out loud. And there's a few stories in there too, I think they're going to even think twice about.
Yeah.
But the idea of doing this book is something I've been wanting to do for a long time because I've realized, and I think we would agree, that I won't say most gardeners are parents, but you know, a lot of gardeners are parents, but a lot of parents aren't gardeners. And so I want to reach that group as well. And it's going to be one of these. It's an inexpensive book. It's, you know, a little bit more than $20. It's an easy book to give to people. It's a great gift book. So I'm hoping you're going to enjoy it. And it's come out this week, so you guys are the absolute first people to hear about it on this kind of show.
Wow.
So there you go.
So one of the things that's really fun in the book, and Mike, I need the camera back.
All right.
Is you've got these illustrations scattered throughout by Valerie Nichols. Like here's you at 2 a.m. trying to work with your oldest daughter. But I mean, just kind of really good illustrations there.
Yeah. Show another one. I've got your camera there. There we go. Yeah. And
the illustrations make the book come alive. And as I said, I've been thinking about doing this book for some long. that was called The Big Pinch. But anyway,
yeah, great story.
So she's terrific, and she really does make them come alive. This book is a cross between, for those of you who are old enough to know Irma Bombeck times Dr. Seuss. And so I hope it's something that makes you smile.
Yeah, well, kind of Irma Bombeck-ish, yeah.
Yeah. Although you do refer to Dr. Spock in there a few times.
Yeah, I do.
You guys didn't exactly agree with his advice, did you?
When you're young and having little babies, Dr. Spock seems to be the man to go to, and you can't. You got to do your own thing. You got to take his advice and then figure out what it really means. So it was that's part of the story, so for sure.
I'm really fascinated that you wrote these things down as they were happening. That as you actually mentioned, I believe in the preface, that most people don't do that. And so they have these vague memories of what happened and what's
urban
interesting,
legends of what happened.
Right. And what happens is you tell stories, they morph. But then at some point they become hardened in amber. So that's the story, the way I tell it. And of course, my partner tells it completely differently, and both of those have hardened in amber. Did you find as you were writing this, and you had to embellish a little bit because I'm sure you didn't have all of the details as you wrote these stories. Did you find that your wife Susan, or your daughters Laura or Heather, or even Big John, your son, would say, "No, Dad, that's not the way it happened"? Or did you not show it to them as you were doing it?
Oh gosh, I had to show it to them. I mean, a bunch of you are going to ask me when you read this book, does my son still talk to me?
Do any of your kids still talk to you?
There's some stories there that, I definitely went, and whether they had read them very thoroughly or not, these are kids, what do I know? But they certainly had the opportunity. And the major, there were some embellishments, of course, just with the grandkids who weren't there when I wrote them, obviously. But they're pretty close to, the substance is close to what happened. But the dates are certainly tricky. I must say that whether they were 2 years old or 3 years old, I'm really not exactly sure.
Matter.
Susan helped me on that for sure. Yeah, Susan was good. She tried to edit as best as she could, and tell me that we'll still have some children to talk to later.
Yeah, although your grandchildren really enjoyed hearing the story. See you have to skip a generation to
Yeah.
really get the appreciation for those stories. I'm fascinated by Laura coming out, so to speak, at 22 or 24 inches long when she was born.
Oh,
I was 22. So
were you?
I've always said, well, I was a huge baby coming out, and I'm still a big baby. But thank you.
Well, the illustration, I don't know, Peggy, if you have it, the illustration of me trying to hold Laura when she was born. I mean, she folded. Uh, I mean, she folded.
Wait. Now
And so,
I got to go back to that. Hang on a second, Peggy. I'll find that one, and here we go. All right. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. But anyway, so I mean, she was a lovely baby, and thank the Lord, all was well, and she was healthy. But she's 6'2", 6'1",
Mhm.
6'2" now. So it was fine. It was just she was tall, and because she was tall, she always tried to make herself look smaller. She tried to make herself look shorter, I should say, and she was very shy and all that. But
So,
because she was tall, but she's fabulous now.
Well, you
so
mentioned, and Peggy, I'm imagining you were pretty tall in your classes, right?
yeah, I've been this height since I was 11.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
And I was this height pretty much early on, and so and you mentioned this in the book, Alan. All the kids who are always in the back of
Hmm.
the class photos, and you just see their heads, and you don't see anything else.
Yep. But
Sometimes you
you
don't
said
even
it
see their
covered up the
heads.
ketchup and the mustard he was wearing. So there
That's
you
right.
go.
That's right. Really, yeah. I mean, Susan and I are reasonably tall, but we're the shortest in our respective families. So we tend to. My son is 6'5". We tend to have taller
Wow.
children, but that's Big John, of course, and that's.
So
But we're blessed. We're blessed.
where did the genes come from?
Oh, as I say, we're short in our families. So I'm about 6 feet. My my wife's about 5'10" ish, but we're the shortest. So the uncles and aunts and all that stuff, they're there.
Uh,
But we have normal children too.
Well, it's interesting because Kathleen, my partner's family, is kind of like that. Her brother's family has they had a girl who's now 6'1", and
Yeah.
two boys, 6'5" and 6'6".
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the short
It
one.
happens.
So
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it
my
happens.
parents are both over 6 feet, and I'm the short one.
All right. There you go.
So,
There you
Well,
go.
at any rate, I want to tell folks if you want an enjoyable read, and as Alan mentioned, this would be really good for the house. Here we are. You're looking at shortages in the supply chain, not for this book. You can get this book and give a friend or a family member a nice, pleasant read, something to occupy them on these dark winter months and dark winter nights. And go to allanarmitage.net, or you can go to mikenovak.net, and the links are there, and you should take advantage of this if you can. Good job there, Alan.
Thank you. And I just want to say one thing in signing off here. If you're interested, I'm interested for gifts for Christmas or whatever it is, that season coming up apparently. Do it soon. I only say that because the post office is going to be chaotic this season. It just is. Everything is slower. Everything is in short supply, and I've already started to sell a few books on the website. As I say, it's only been out a week, but if you're interested, if you're not, no worries. But if you are, do it as soon as you can because I'd like you to get the book when you would like to get it. That's all, or any other book for that matter.
Yeah, and if you want to get it for a gift, yeah, you want to get it before the holidays, definitely.
Yeah,
But
like your
you're
new perennial book.
right.
yeah, yeah.
And
Come on.
why not? But if you're like I said, if you're a serious gardener, this is something you want to
Oh yeah,
consider.
you
Uh,
want that under the tree, definitely.
but you're not getting off that easy, Alan. We still got eight
Oh,
minutes here. Okay. No, 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 no,
okay.
no.
Let's
I'm
do
not.
it.
I'm not.
You're not going anywhere.
I told you I was going to hit you up for gardening advice. And by the way, Peggy, just quick question. Deb wants to know how tall you are.
5'9".
Okay, that's pretty reasonable.
but it's short for my
that
family.
really. And what are your other sibs?
Well, I don't have any, but
Oh, okay, your
my
dad.
dad was 6'1", and my mom was 6 feet. Or my dad is now my height, but he was 6'1", and my mom was 6 feet. So
we know what happens there.
Yeah. Uh, all right. One of the things I wanted to talk about very briefly, because I never know. I'm not. I'm a northern guy. You were from Canada, Montreal area originally, right? You still say a boot, which I really
A boot.
appreciate. A boot. Uh, but then you moved to Michigan to go to Michigan State, and then you moved to Georgia, and Michigan was not so different from Canada, except for the tornadoes, I would imagine. But Georgia, boy, that's different. And here we are, the first week of November in the north. We're all getting ready. Rick DiMaio, our meteorologist, later in the show, is going to tell us that in about a week and a half, we may actually have a big snowstorm here in Chicago.
no.
But in Georgia, there are still some things are still green. I know that trees lose their leaves. The question I have about gardening in Georgia and in the South in general, what is different about being in zone, what are you, 8?
7B, 8A, whatever is in vogue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this means that to some extent, you can garden all year round in Georgia, right?
Okay. Time out.
Okay.
Time out. Okay. And this is true. So where I happen to live, in what North Georgia, in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. Essentially, geographically, it's hot as heck in the summer, but we have 4 seasons. We don't get the snow Chicago gets. We don't get the cold for as long a period of time, but we do get freezes and freezing rain, and we get snow occasionally. So we have 4 seasons. So we are still in the temperate zone. So the perennials I grow are essentially similar to those that you grow. You probably grow them better because cold is better for perennials in general. But having said that, yeah, I couldn't go any further south. My body won't allow me to go any further south. But if you talk about gardening in the South, and you're talking about South Georgia or North Florida or whatever, it is a totally different beast. Mostly because we don't get as much cold as necessary to essentially vernalize and get those great perennials into dormancy and out again. But having said that, my daughter is in Macon, Georgia, which is in central Georgia, and she does a pretty good job with gardening. But we don't do it 4 seasons. Well, certainly here I don't. I am about ready to take my garden down, but it still looks pretty good right now, probably compared to many others. The carrots are still doing well, and I've got leaves on trees still. Our color is about a month at least later than your color, but we do get some pretty good color on the trees. So it's different, to be sure, and it was a big learning curve, but it's still gardening, and we still fret and carry on and get sore backs, sore knees, and are broke. So other than that, it's not a lot different.
Okay. Now the question I would ask is, as you say, it's in some ways it's harder because
Yeah, it is much.
the plants can't go into full dormancy. But is that because folks in Georgia are trying to bring northern plants into the southern regions, and rather than going with the natives that are adapted to Georgia weather?
Well, as a generalization, I'd say no, but as certainly some people are. For example, I invite certainly Peggy and Mike and any of your viewers to come see me in lovely Athens, Georgia. It's a lovely town, a lovely place, and you'll see most of the same plants you're growing. But I can't grow peonies as well as you do, and to try to do that, I still grow them, but they just knowing what they're supposed to look like, they're not very good. And the same thing, in my opinion, is true with things like dahlias. Grow a dahlia or a peony in Alaska, and you're going to have the best plants ever. So trying to bring those down here, you're going to be a bit disappointed. But I can grow just as good a daylily as you can. I can grow just as good an echinacea or a coreopsis or a rudbeckia as you can. But we can also do some things like alstroemeria that won't overwinter for you that might for me. So there's some things like that that are quite different, and it's a learning curve, to be sure. But if I'm going to try and grow a delphinium here, I mean, I'm also just shoot myself now. Although having said that, the breeding on delphiniums is coming around, so that there are some that are a bit more warm tolerant than before. But I think you're absolutely right, Mike. There are people that want to bring in a stilby here, and they can grow them. They're just not nearly as good as what you're doing. It's a matter of degrees more than yes or no.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of Stilby. As for delphiniums, I think it's Tracy DeSabato Oust who says nobody can grow a delphinium well. So it
You're
can
Yeah,
be.
right.
why?
Well, why would you even try? Yeah, I tried back in the day, and and once you get it to bloom well, and you go, wow, that's spectacular, and then the plant's leggy or it's just not performing well, and you move on to hardier
Move on.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's like tulips. It's like tulips. I mean,
Well,
this
let me
is a
ask you
year.
about. I was going to ask you about that. Bulbs. Do you have the same issue
Yeah.
with bulbs in Georgia?
Well, we do in a way in that I can grow. I can't grow, for instance, I can't grow uh, snowdrops,
Huh.
galanthus. I can't
Huh.
grow winter aconite. Or I just can't grow those as well as you
The,
can because I
the
don't have
early
enough
bulbs,
cold.
the
The
super
early
bulbs.
bulbs. Now I can grow some great early bulbs. I can grow crocus if the squirrels don't eat them. But those. But tulips, even for you guys, are generally annuals.
Yeah.
In Montreal we had them as perennials, but even then, after the third year, they had kind of petered out. So, but daffodils, we do a fabulous job with daffodils, and the other ones, hyacinths, I can grow them, but I hate them. Bulbs are a bit of an issue. I fill my garden with bulbs. I really do, and I have some terrific things in the smaller ones. But you do a better job in bulbs than we do.
Well, it's not. We have nothing to do with it. It's simply where we
Well,
live.
I see the climate. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, it's all about cold. It's all about how the
Generic
soil
we.
gets cold
We.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
the
the
generic we. Yeah,
or the royal we. I don't know.
And that
Um,
would be the royal wave.
right. Exactly. Well, Alan, this is fascinating stuff. I think we'll have to have you on again soon and talk about. I love talking about differences in gardening and what people can get
no,
away with
it's
and what they can't
And
get
what
away
they
with.
can expect. I mean, lots of
yeah.
times is, somebody sees it, it's in a magazine, it's been prepped for months, and then they try it themselves, even though it's supposed to grow there. Yeah, what can you actually expect
What,
from
what,
it?
what would be fun to talk about would be, okay, let's talk about roses in the south and north, but let's talk about some of the new things the breeders are developing because where the breeders are going is all about heat and humidity. That's where the breeding is going.
Yeah.
Because,
Ah,
and I mentioned delphinium. We'll never grow a delphinium here to save our lives, but we might grow a delphinium that will last a bit longer than the regular old delphiniums. But we're seeing a lot of that kind of thing now that, the breeders are doing a lot of some good, some bad, some terrible, some ugly as sin, but it's fun to talk about anyway.
right. And well, my advice, and I hope you agree, is that if you want to grow a tulip, grow a species tulip.
Hmm.
Yeah,
They,
I love them.
I love them
I love
too.
them. Yeah,
And the
and
squirrels don't
some of
seem to
them
like
have
them as
a lot
much.
more.
Well,
What's that?
And the squirrels don't seem to like them as much
Oh,
either.
we won't go there for now.
all right. Well, Dr. Allan Armitage is the author of Hold It Up Again, Peggy. Big Tales of Big John and Other Creatures available right now. Go to allanarmitage.net or go to mikenovak.net and you'll find a link to purchase the book. Read it for yourself, give it to a friend, give it to an enemy, whatever.
And use
And
the
don't
code
forget to
Mike
put
and
Mike.
save on shipping.
Use the Mike. And by the way, Mike, you asked about going from north to south. I think I showed you this book called "It's Not Just About the Hat," and that's essentially the storybook again about how in the world we got here from there. And not that's a royal we, by the way, because all of us get here from there somehow. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's on the website too if you're interested.
Yeah, obviously he's written 1,700 books, so you should start.
Yeah, there we go. And we have one really quick 20-second answer from Deb, who says, what is a species tulip?
Well, if you go to any decent bulb grower, you're not going to find species tulips at Walmart, but if you go to any decent grower online, there's a number of species tulips. Atlantia, there's 3 or 4 really good ones. Some yellows and some peppermint types that are the species. They're not They don't have a fancy name. Try those out, and I think you're really going to be. And they're not any more expensive, quite truthfully.
Well, and
Than
they're
some of the others
basically
we grow.
what tulips used to look like hundreds of
Exactly.
years
Yeah,
ago.
they're very much shorter and
Yeah,
Before,
usually shorter, usually, and you put, by the way, and again, I know you want to get rid of me, but if you're doing bulbs and you really want to get a show, plant them bulb to bulb, or, don't make soldiers out of them. So if you have these species tulips, get 12, put them together in one
yeah.
area, and you're just gonna love them.
The idea is here's how I would say: don't dig a hole for each bulb. Dig a big hole. Put a bunch of bulbs in. So even if you have only 2 big holes, you've got 2 really spectacular displays of bulbs coming up.
as
Whether they're
opposed to little.
one here, one there, one there, it doesn't do
Yeah,
anything.
and if I might just mention one other thing on bulbs, I dig a big hole, I do exactly what you say, and I put different bulbs in that hole. I'll have daffodils, tulips, and crocus in the same hole. Okay, so the crocus will come up first, and then maybe the foliage of the daffodils, and anyway, so one hole, and it always changes. I'm all about changing
It's
the,
great.
the plumbing.
It saves on the
Because
back.
I'm lazy mostly.
Yeah. Dr. Allan Armitage, thanks so much, buddy. It's good seeing you. We'll see you again real soon, okay?
I hope so. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Enjoy the fall.
All the best.
It's the
Okay,
Mike.
you too. All the best.
It's the Mike
Come
Nowak show.
see us.
Yeah, everybody, go down to Athens tomorrow. All right,
Thanksgiving at Allen's.
I'm
There
getting
you go. No worries.
I'm getting a bus together, and we're all going down there. Okay, it's
See
the
you then.
Mike Nowak show with Peggy Malecki. I'll get this out eventually. Stick around. We'll be back with more. From spring seed and soil treatments to summer foliar feeding to fall stubble digesters, Blazing Star provides microbial tools from tiny biologicals for natural and organic farmers. They have solutions for home gardeners too. And Blazing Star also offers agroecological education and consulting, especially for permaculture work in zones 4 and 5. Learn more about these great folks and great techniques at blazing-star.com.
You can help slow climate change in 2021 by composting, and you don't even need a backyard. By composting communally in multi-unit buildings across Chicagoland, Collective Resource Compost has diverted 7,000 tons of food scrap since 2010. CRC brings you a fresh 5-gallon bucket or a 32-gallon neighbor tote with each pickup. You fill it with organic matter, they swap it out, and get it to a commercial composting operation. Fight climate change. Go to collectiveresource.us.
And now for something completely different.
Oh, holy night, late December back in 1 BC, 'twas the night of the nativity. What a baby, what a night.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm.
So you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town, Santa Claus is coming to town, Santa Claus is coming to town. Then how the reindeer loved him, as they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history. You'll go down in history. They loved him, yeah, yeah, yeah. They loved him, yeah, yeah, yeah. They loved him, yeah, 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 yeah.
And we popped that up there. Oh, thank you very much. We popped.
Who is that
up.
guy with the short hair and no goatee?
I know it. I gotta get rid of this. This is too well. No, look at our next guest there. He's got one of these too. I don't. Yeah, except yours. You can really grow one. That's Brad Roos from Sustain Rockford. Welcome to the program this morning, Brad.
Good morning.
It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. I will mention before we go to Brad the Frozen Robins, that's my caroling group, and I don't put that up there just to entertain you. I put it up there so you'll hire us. let's be clear about
Book
what.
now. Weekend's going fast.
That's right. It's the holiday season. Da 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 da. And Christmas is back, so we hope you take advantage of this. But we're moving on to more serious matters at the time, although some people take their holidays very, very seriously. Coming up this week, Friday, November 12th, 8:30 to 4 p.m. at the Embassy Suites in downtown Rockford. It is GreenTown Rockford, and it is a series of conferences. GreenTown has been going on since 2007. I was kind of surprised that it has been that long, and it's a friend of the show, John Harris, and A5, also 7 generations ahead, put on these conferences, and they've been all over the Midwest, in Michigan, in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. They need to add Iowa and Wisconsin at some point, Brad. But this week, the conference comes to Rockford. Tell me a little bit about, and we'll get to the whole issue of Bell Bowl Prairie, but I want you to talk a little bit about what folks can plan to see if they take part in the conference this week.
Well, it's going to be a very big conference. It's way bigger and more people coming than we had expected. We are now pushing 500.
Wow.
We had originally figured that we'd be looking at about 300. And
in person and virtual, right?
It will be both in person and virtual. So far, as of Friday, there were 483 in-person registrations.
My goodness.
So the majority of the people, the vast majority of the people will be in person, which is fine. And we have COVID protocols in place so that everyone will be safe. We'll be socially distancing where it's necessary and appropriate. So it'll be good.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit. You're one of the founding members of Sustain Rockford. In fact, let me pop that up so people can see your logo there. Tell us a little bit about Sustain Rockford.
Sustain Rockford started when 5 of us from Rockford went to the Dubuque, Iowa, by the way, Growing Sustainable Communities Conference. That was their 9th annual conference like that. And so that that conference was attended by about 500 people. And those folks were, I learned, from government. They were from the tech sector. They were from public works departments and city and county staff members, as well as academics and students. So I went because I was interested in the Bee Branch Creek, which is the bee as in bumblebee. And Dubuque, they had suffered tremendous property damage as a result of repeated flooding of the Bee Branch Creek. Over a 12-year period, they had 6 FEMA events and had lost 100 homes, and tens of millions of dollars of flood mitigation had gone into that. And Rockford had a similar situation, so I was interested to see what they had done. Wow, they knocked it out of the park. $239 million multi-year, multi-funding sourced mitigation effort that turned it into a what people call, I guess, a linear park, as well as mitigation at the top and the middle of the Bee Branch Creek watershed. So I went thinking that this would be what I would learn. My academic background is in chemistry and environmental studies from the University of Illinois. You know, go Illini. So, you know,
there you go.
But
I don't know.
Well,
how are they doing in football?
You're always going to offend somebody, but anyway, so I thought this would be a great refresher, and I was totally blown away and humbled by the scope and scale to which people have gone to create sustainable communities. That whole communities were adopting plans. That was the big takeaway. And so I came back to Rockford and I said, "Do we have this? Do we have a sustainability plan?" And I just didn't know it. And for the sake of your viewers and yourselves, perhaps, I mean, I've been in neighborhood development for over 40 years. I've led statewide organizations. I've done consulting in 4 states. I've been around, and how come I didn't know this, and how come
Mhm.
other people didn't know this? And when I asked in town, do our community leaders at all sectors, do we have this? And people said, not only did they say no, we don't have this. We tried this with a planning grant from during the Obama administration, but it never got legs
Hmm.
to the point of being holistic. And so, like, unfortunately, like perhaps many sustainability or many plans, it sits on a shelf somewhere. And
Wow.
what these communities were doing was anything but passive or sitting on a shelf. They were
Mhm.
extraordinary. And just as a background, I mean, I've gotten to know a lot of people who, in various communities who do this, and sustainability officers in Madison and Grand Rapids and Dubuque and Elgin and all that. And in talking, for example, with Annabelle Wilkinson, who is up in Grand Rapids, I asked for a copy of their most recent sustainability plan, and she said, "We don't have one." And I said, I'm momentarily shocked. And she said, "No, we've just built this into this is a core value for us now. We no longer have a separate sustainability plan. Sustainability runs strong as a strong theme through everything we do."
Mhm.
Wow. I thought that's just stellar and appropriate, and it's collective, and I loved it. So all of the folks who've been in an orbit around what Sustain Rockford is doing have promoted this GreenTown conference, and here we are coming up. We were
Great.
fortunate enough to meet John Harris and Gary Kineen from 7 Generations Ahead. So knowing that somebody else had invented the wheel was certainly a big draw for us to make it a simple and successful event.
So what changed? What changed from the Obama administration, which was not that long ago,
Right.
and you were not able to, excuse the pun, sustain this group? What has changed in just the last few years? Is it the urgency of climate change that has become more and more apparent? In the next half hour, we're going to be talking about the climate conference in Glasgow, Scotland. Was that it, or was it something else? Was it the right people who came in at the right time? Was it you and other people who made this happen? What changed?
Yes. I mean,
all of the above.
All of the
yes, yeah,
above.
that's the yes, exactly.
Right. The time was
I've
now
heard,
right.
yeah, I think we've all heard the expression that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And for an idea to come, it takes the right people, the right circumstances. Everything came together beautifully for this conference. And I do think you're right, Mike, that, a lot of people are just knowing that the urgency is just there. They're seeing it. The giant sequoias are burning. The Colorado River, which carved the Grand Canyon, is drying up. The mighty Mississippi is flooding our towns and cities, and the Great Smoky Mountains are losing their crown of clouds, and we're all seeing it. So,
Mhm.
and that's just in this country, let alone the island nations in the Pacific and the others that are starting to have to look for a new place to live.
Yeah.
So,
And,
yeah,
and
I think we all know.
and I think, Brad, some of it may also be on a global scale, it's really hard to see any difference. But locally in your own town,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can contribute.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where it's almost always where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? It's right there where you are and where your sphere of influence is. Very few of us have a national reach. Some do, and some have even an international reach. But most of us have friends and family and colleagues in our own cities, and we can get together and motivate them. And politics usually takes a back seat.
Well, and I guess that would be one of the driving forces of Greentown, which is take all these individual cities throughout the Midwest and have them focus on their own issues, as you talk about. And suddenly you have a whole. You have all these people who have done that, they've examined that, and
Yeah,
then they look around
yeah,
and say, wait a second, we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
yes.
So you reach some sort of critical mass.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. And one of the things that we found out early was we found out early that in our community in the Rockford region, there are lots of wonderful sustainable things going on. we also found out that the people who have implemented those things typically felt like they were doing it alone, that nobody else was doing anything.
Mm.
You know, and so one of the things that a conference like this brings, if nothing else, and of course there will be lots else, but it brings that sense to people like, I am not alone. People are
Yeah.
doing wonderful things in this community and in this region. What we need to do to get the where the sum is greater than the or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, is to bring people together and then knit together a plan that coordinates people and helps leverage everything.
Yeah. Shares the resources.
Yes, that and the enthusiasm. In our community, for example, I think that there are, and I think a lot of people would agree, a lot of people who have been outside of the orbit of public activity as environmentalists and sustainability advocates of one sort or another, feeling like they just didn't have any place to stand. There was no handle, you could say, in public policy or public activity for them. So they've been, sort of out there as high energy, high resource people, but not engaged. And so when you have a sustainability plan, what you hope for is you hope to engage those people and say, oh, what you have been doing and thinking about and caring about is really central. It's central to what we need and want for a sustainable community. So get on the wagon and let's all do this together.
And I think a lot of the sustainable things that are happening, plans that are going on, they don't make the news. They're not in the newspaper. People don't see it. And this is a great opportunity to see what is happening. People don't even know what's going on.
Peggy, I think not only do people not see it, but when they do see it, they don't see how it fits. They see it as a, don't you think? I think they see it as a one-off. So, for example, Severson Dells, which is a great nature center just outside of Rockford, and it's a wonderful facility, and it's growing, and they've got great leadership out there. And people would say, "Well, isn't that nice?" Well, yeah, it's nice, but nature is healing. Nature has a healing force, and I'm not talking about mystical thing and crystals and stuff like that. I'm talking about walking in the woods reminds you that you're part of something bigger than yourself, and that for your mental health is good. Being outside is good. Being outside with your friends and family is good. It reminds you that life is not all about hard surfaces. And
it's not all about the screen in front of you.
No, it's not. And I think,
but also hard surfaces, concrete and asphalt as well.
Well, that's actually what I meant. But of course, impermeable surfaces.
Impermeables, yeah.
Yes. So I think as people begin to see how Severson Dells, as an example, fits in to community sustainability, or how our wastewater treatment facility, which is the Four Rivers Sanitation Authority, how they fit in tightly and importantly in what we're doing, or groundwater, which is massively important in our northern Illinois part of the country. So, beginning to see how this stuff fits together, I think is really invaluable.
And preserving the land and preserving the water versus development.
Aimed at the truth.
Well, and that takes us to something that has happened in the last couple of months in Rockford. This conference obviously was planned long ago, and then suddenly you became the center of the environmental universe in Illinois, at least, when there were the plans from the Chicago Rockford International Airport to create a road and add more facilities, because they've gotten money from various sources and they wanted to take advantage of it, except it was going to be at the expense of Bell Bowl Prairie, which is a remnant prairie, a gravel prairie, of which there are maybe 20 acres left in the entire state of Illinois, and this is just under 5 acres. And people mobilized and the airport backed off, but we're still and it's interesting that you had this conference set up. You were planning to talk about this, but now you have to, which I think is a good thing. And I think it's a wonderful confluence of events. So you say you were talking to Carrie Lee, who is the executive director of the Natural Land Institute. We've had her on the show now a couple of times. She's terrific, and she's been fighting the good fight. What is the latest? What have you learned about this?
Yeah, well, first of all, when you say, I mean, Carrie and the Natural Land Institute are really at the heart of the action. They've been at the tip of the spear, as it were. But the interesting thing has been how people have been touched and moved about this particular about the Bell Bowl Prairie, and how many people have responded. I mean, the grassroots response has been enormous and really very important. I mean, we are the Prairie State, right? And by Carrie's calculation and others, there is less than 1/100% of Illinois natural prairie left in the Prairie State.
Yeah, that's pretty much generally accepted as the figure.
Yeah. So, the current state is that on the 27th of October, and I think a lot of people may have seen this, the Natural Land Institute filed a complaint. They filed a complaint, a request for a temporary injunction, and a request for a temporary restraining order on the airport authority to stop them from their plans to push a road through the highest quality portion of that dry gravel prairie at Bell Bowl. And so the very next day, the airport authority provided a written agreement that they would stop action on that road until March 1st of 2022. So a few months. And they also agreed that they would remove one of the planned detention ponds from their design as part of their airport expansion. There are two detention ponds that are originally in the plans,
right?
And they will remove one that was endangering the Bell Bowl Prairie. That's good, and it was the result of 6,000 people taking the call to action, and 30,000 letters, literally 30,000 letters that went out to state and federal officials on about this.
Coverage everywhere, including Smithsonian Magazine.
Yeah, and the Trib did a great job. The Trib did a very nice job.
Trib, we know Cheryl DeVore. She's a friend of the show, and she wrote some articles for the Trib. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but Patty Wetley at WTTW was on this before pretty much anybody in Chicago.
Yeah.
So congratulations to her.
Yep. So the fight is on now. What the Natural Land Institute did after the 28th was withdraw their request for the temporary restraining order and the temporary injunction. However, the complaint stands. The complaint is still on file with the federal courthouse, and the legal team that Carrie has assembled continues to do research and will do some depositions, and there will be a trial. And one of the major focuses of the trial will be whether or not the Illinois Department of Transportation's environmental assessment was done properly. And Natural Land Institute has found and read the environmental assessment, which was done several years ago, and found it to be, as Carrie said, deeply flawed. The key element that they found as a flaw was that, amazingly, the environmental assessment did not find any rusty patch bumblebees, which is a federally endangered animal, federally endangered insect. They also did not find 6 of the state listed endangered plant species, including I'm not good at this, but the
penstemon,
dandelion false. Yes. Okay. And so they didn't find those. And yet the ecologist that is employed by Natural Land Institute sees these things on a regular basis. So, and it turns, ironically, as fate would have it, our nephew, Ian Pierce, is a PhD in botany. And he has been engaged in a in a survey of the rusty patch bumblebee, and he visited us this summer when he was researching various places. I contacted him, and he said he did not go to the Bell Bowl Prairie, but that northern Illinois is one of the richest areas of this endangered species.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're everywhere. They're key important pollinators as well. So the fact that the environmental assessment missed these 7 endangered species of animals and plants is what led Natural Land Institute to believe that the study was fatally flawed. However, the goal of the lawsuit is not to sort of like gain monetary, damages or anything like that, because you can't rebuild an 8,000-year-old dry gravel prairie. You simply can't do it, and you can't move it.
Right.
No,
that's something. I mean, I'm new to this game, Mike and Peggy. I didn't know about the Bell Bowl Prairie, so I'm getting educated on it. But one of the things that I learned that was very interesting is that you can't pick it up, no matter how big your scoop is, so to speak, and move it, because not only do the plants not necessarily tolerate that, and you guys would know way more about that than I do, but the microbiome of the soil is very unique and also delicate. And so if you just sort of scoop it all up, if you don't get it all, it can't be done. It just is simply
and the horizons
can't. And
of the soil and everything. It's a prairie on site. It's not a prairie if you move it.
Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. And the goal of the lawsuit is not to get monetary damages. It is not to just sort of thumb your nose at the airport authority. The goal is to say, wow, design ideas for airports and for other buildings have gone so far in the last 10, 20, 30 years. For example, and so let's use best practices. Judy Barnard, who is one of the members of the board for Natural Land Institute, is also the secretary of Sustain Rockford. And so we talk a lot. And she brought along at the press conference on the 27th, when the complaint was filed, she brought along this really thick document that is the environmental design criteria used by the Chicago Airport Authority. They have green roofs on many of their buildings. Mm-hmm. They have, I think, goats out there grazing. They have apiaries. They are raising bees.
And you don't necessarily need retention ponds if you have permeable pavement.
And that's right.
Domenico D'Alessandro has talked about that on our show as well. Right. And he's really an advocate for not just saving the prairie, but building on it, making something special out of that area. And I'm with
creating a
show people what can be done.
Right. And it seems to me that that's right in line with what the conference is going to be about, the GreenTown Rockford. Let's be bold, for crying out loud. Let's do something magnificent. Let's not just save something. Let's make it better than it was in July of 2021. And it can be done. We're basically out of time, but this is obviously Bell Bowl Prairie is not the only thing that will be discussed. I mean, Doug Scott, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the Great Plains Institute, is going to be talking about opportunities for the Rockford area to move toward net zero emissions, which is a goal of many communities. Sustainability and Climate Action Plan 101 is going to be discussed. As we just mentioned, preserving land and water for future generations, the importance of groundwater, strategies to reduce food waste and greenhouse gas emissions. And you're even going to have a tour of the Rockford area. What's very briefly, what's going to be on that tour?
We've got 2 buses lined up from the very generous folks at the Rockford Mass Transit District, and we'll be driving around the center part of town to sustainability sites, those sites that have really incorporated a lot of sustainability elements. So that'll take about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
All right.
I was just going to mention there's a couple of other things, urban agriculture, solar energy, greenways, healthy communities. There's a lot of health and wellness involved. So something for everyone's interests.
Yeah, I think if you allow me just this 1 minute.
Sure.
what I've learned is that sustainability is like the proverbial three-legged stool, right?
Mhm.
It's, a lot of people use acronyms that help. It helps me, but people, planet, and prosperity, or environment, equity, and economy. So without any one of those components, it doesn't work. So the Natural Land Institute wants to work with, for example, the
Mhm.
airport authority to create not just something great, but to create something that's more sustainable than it otherwise would have been. And that's what we want to do with our communities. Is we need to move to see that sustainability is not doesn't depend on just environmental sensitivity. It requires really a holistic view and something that people not only can do, but a lot of best practices have been out there for 10, 15, 20 years, and all we need to do is appropriate them. I know, say only, but it ends up being a matter of political and personal will, doesn't it?
Mhm.
It's not a question of
right.
how. We know how.
And
We know how.
priorities.
Well,
Yeah, priorities. Yeah.
I think often the personal will is there, the political will is far behind, often lacking.
Mhm.
We just don't know. I mean, and that's something we're going to be discussing in the next hour. How do you translate lofty speeches into political will and get things done? It's hard.
Well, at Glasgow, they've got Greta Thunberg and her cast of thousands. At the GreenTown Rockford conference, we will have over 160 students, and I will be welcoming them personally at the beginning and asking them to stand, and asking them to remain standing if they think the other adults in the room are going to need their help going forward.
Fantastic.
I'm pretty sure they're going to remain standing.
Yeah, who knows?
Yep.
Brad Roos, thank you. He's from Sustain Rockford. Of course, if you want more information about the conference, go to greentownconference.com. You can also go to my website, mikenovak.net. I've got the links there and a link to where you can register. Hey, turn it into 1,000 people. Let's go from 500 to 1,000 and let them try to deal with it.
Well, and you can join virtually too if you don't want to drive.
That's right.
Exactly
Right.
All right.
Exactly right.
Much success with the conference this week. Thank you for being with us, Brad Roos.
My pleasure. Thank you both, Mike and Peggy.
It's the Mike
Thanks, Brad.
Nowak Show with Peggy Molecki. More to come. Stick around, please.
It's difficult to imagine anything more powerful than a severe storm. They can come upon us and have a devastating impact on our trees and homes. Heavy winds can uproot entire trees of any size, especially when the soil has become saturated by abundant rain. They can also cause very large branches to snap and fall. Lightning strikes, wind, snow, and ice, all these things can put a valued tree at risk and even compromise the safety of your property. Mother Nature is unpredictable. The best thing you can do is to be prepared. Bartlett Tree Experts is here to help. Our arborist representatives are experts in pre-storm strategies that can reduce the likelihood of storm damage to your trees. When they visit your property, they will inspect, assess, and recommend an appropriate course of action. Pruning can remove dangerous dead branches or target heavy limbs that may pose a threat in high winds. Structural support systems such as high-strength cable or bracing rods can make it less likely to fail. Lightning protection systems can protect high-value, susceptible, or mature trees and safely conduct strikes to the ground. And based on the location of the tree and its proximity to walkways or structures, Bartlett Tree Experts can also provide safe removal of trees that pose a high risk of failure. Now, when a storm does hit, we can work long and hard to help remediate tree damage. If our clients' trees and properties are impacted, we understand their needs may be pressing. We meet this urgency by mobilizing our crews immediately upon the passing of the storm. And because we operate in many areas, we are able to bring these teams in quickly from other parts of the country not impacted by severe weather, and we begin working as soon as conditions allow. Once emergency services are complete, we begin the process of cleanup and repair on other storm-damaged trees and shrubs. Even if your trees seem unharmed, it's a good idea to have one of our arborists perform a more detailed inspection. Sometimes critical damage to a tree can possibly go unnoticed to an untrained eye. So remember, before the storm and after, Bartlett Tree Experts is here to help.
Welcome to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Molecki. green, gardening, and environment radio with just a soupçon of humor. Or is that a dash? Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. Here they are again, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
All I need is good food to eat and make me healthy, wealthy, wide awake. Lettuce, tomatoes, root bacon. What about those sweet potatoes? All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good tools to make me music, porches, lawn serene. Give me all that I can take.
Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. I'm trying to send myself something here that happened and I don't know if it's going to show up or not, but I've got a couple of photos that from things that went on in my yard this week, which was before we get to the
goings on in your yard.
I had, boy, you saw some of the goings on in my yard. And
oh yeah, okay, those goings on.
Yeah, and
time blends. I lose track.
Yeah, and I'm trying to send, and I realize I just tried to send myself a couple of videos, and what happened is
I don't know if people want to see a couple of those videos over breakfast.
Well, I would tell them not to eat breakfast, and I'd tell them to avert their eyes for 30 seconds. But they're verticals because I shot them so that I could post them on Instagram. I tell you, the tyranny of social media. I can't tell you how. I know another social media rant, but
once it's the metaverse, it's all going to be beautiful.
Oh my God. Zuckerberg, nobody cares. Your meta, whatever. Oh, geez.
Metaverse. There was an entire op-ed in the New York Times the other day about all the billionaires and the metaverse world they're trying to create that is trapping the rest of the world.
The meta schmeta is what I say to you guys is just whatever you guys want to do, whatever. You're all gazillionaires, and it doesn't matter what we say. Well, I can show something here, and it's going to be sideways. I think, yeah, it is. Okay, it is. The woodpecker's upside down. But
gravity is not working in that photo.
This is in my backyard. Tilt your heads, folks. Tilt your heads, and you can see the downy and a sparrow up there going, "Hey, when do I get some of that?" One of the things I've noticed about the suet cakes out in the yard, except for the woodpecker, basically, it's the sparrows. The juncos come to the yard and they're eating healthy. They're eating the Joe Pye weed seeds and the coneflower seeds. And the sparrows are eating the junk food, which is the suet cakes there.
The nuthatches and the chickadees like as well on the suet, and you probably will have nuthatches.
I don't get those in the city. They don't come to the city.
You probably will. Nuthatches are everywhere. If you're getting juncos, you're going to get nuthatches.
All right. Oh, okay. So here's I think I can do this real quick too. This is all right, this is the one where we're going to warn people.
Avert your eyes.
You might want to avert unless you're a fan.
Well, Bruce is saying the bird was cool, so.
Upside down? Well, yeah.
No, your bird video. He says that was cool. The one you're going to put up now.
Oh, the one I'm going to put up now. Yeah. Here's the deal. We're walking out there in the backyard the other day to go out. Here it is. I think that's it. We're walking out. And I can't believe I look out the back window, and that's why I did a YouTube post of it, and it was dude looking out my back door, and I didn't realize that might fool some people into thinking, oh, this is going to be fun, except it's a hawk, and the hawk, Cooper's hawk, grabbed I think it was a pigeon, and this is in the middle of Logan Square in Chicago. So we're looking at this video. I'm looking at it, so I got to shoot this. So, all right, I'm going to show this. If you're squeamish, and it's not even that, in terms of nature that you might see on National Geographic or The Discovery Channel, not that much, really, because it's from a distance. But this is what I saw. So I'll count down 3, 2, 1. If you want to avert your eyes for 30 seconds, or actually, it's more like 40 or 50 seconds. And I'll let you know when we're done. 3, 2, 1. So this was in my backyard, in the middle of the city of Chicago, in Logan Square, Cooper's Hawk. And look at the feathers there from what was left of the pigeon. And the Cooper's just sort of there. And I was glad my cat wasn't out there, to tell you the truth. But it just shows you that nature can appear anywhere, in even in urban areas. This is what we call urban nature. And what happened is I thought, well, maybe I can sneak out on the porch and get a better shot, because this is through a window. It's not particularly clear. It's clear enough. And then the hawk grabbed the carcass, and immediately, I love that part where the feather goes flying. So that was what happened in my looking out my back door. But yeah, I'm telling you.
You just find these piles of feathers.
Yeah.
Like, same thing here. I get a lot of Cooper's hawks, and they go scooting between the houses.
Right. Yeah, you said that. I saw one, got to be more than a decade ago, on a telephone pole in the back, in the alley. And I'm sitting on the porch, and I go, oh, look, there's a hawk. All of a sudden, it swoops down, grabs a rat in the yard next door, and flies off with it. And I thought, wow, that's great rat control. I want that. I want more of that in my neighborhood. So I thought that. And I'm going to show one more photo. I should have had you sent stuff too. I've got actually two more. Remember the story the other week? Wells Park in Chicago was overrun by grubs.
Oh, the grubs.
Yeah. They were telling these stories of people walking their dogs, and they're feeling the ground is kind of squishy, and they look down and there's thousands and thousands of grubs. So I thought, okay, I've got to, and I went maybe 4 or 5 days after the report came out. It was on in Block Club and on WTTW. I'm telling you, Patty Wetley's doing some great environmental and nature reporting for WTTW. So Kathleen and I go over there, and I should have sent the shot. I don't have it here, but the baseball fields are wasteland. There's no grass, nothing. And I've been there before, and normally there's grass in the outfield. There's nothing. And then I didn't have I should have brought a trowel, but it didn't need it. Kathleen hands me a stick, and I start digging with the stick, and right away, there we go. I'm uncovering grubs, and they're all over the place. It didn't take much to dig up a few grubs. They were still there. I imagine now it's still ground's still fairly warm. The park district apparently said they were going to treat the ground. I'd like to know what they're treating it with.
Yeah.
I have that. That would be something to ask the park district about. But and there was a mom and her little girl there, and they were fascinated by the grubs. And the ground was all bumpy and lumpy and soft. It had just been worked over, just unbelievable. So I was glad I got to see. This is again nature in the city. Here's nature in the city.
The grubs had a party and didn't invite anybody else.
That's right. Well, until the neighbors called the cops, and something like that. And this is I got, as I mentioned on the show the other week, I got my plants in. And I decided to take a little photo of them in the living room, looking out, looking out my front door or front window. And you can see why they go there, because there's 4 windows there, and there's 2 on the left side. So I got 6 windows there with a southern exposure. You would never know it, because it's still dark as heck in the house. Although we have a skylight right above center, which we added. We had added. Boy, you couldn't imagine how dark this living room was for having 6 windows and a southern, 4 of them southern exposure, 2 of them eastern exposure. I don't know how the house stayed as dark as it was, but as you can see, I've got a few plants, and now it's a matter of getting them through the winter. But there was a beautiful late afternoon light there, and I said, okay, let's take a photo.
You had another photo with Legata in it, if I recall, sitting there amongst the plants.
Not that I took recently.
It was something about they're back in the house and Legata was there.
Wasn't me. Don't think so. I don't remember anything like that. So, all right.
So we have a comment back actually from Domenico de Alessandro.
Oh, who has become a listener and a viewer of the show. Thank you, Domenico.
Thank you. He says that was a good conversation regarding the prairie. However, I think we need to take another step forward. The speaker mentioned the 3-legged stool, which is also called the sustainability model. The problem with that model is that it gives the same value to nature as it does to the economy, which is a false equivalent. In my first presentation, I spoke about the slide. We need to place nature first. We depend on the biosphere for our life. The economy was created by us, and we can manipulate it to whatever we wish. This is a much longer conversation to have.
Oh, absolutely, Domenico, you're spot on. This is just the beginning, and if people think that environmentalists are going to be satisfied by just chopping up that prairie and say, "Oh, we're going to save that little bit over there," you got another guest coming. That's not the way this is going to play out. It better not. I certainly hope it doesn't. So well spoken, Domenico. And thank you for being a new viewer.
Yeah,
to
we'll
the
need
show.
to continue that conversation soon. And then back to the houseplants. Snappy J Dog says, I get ants and spider mites in my indoor overwintering plants. How to avoid?
Spider mites, from what I understand, like very dry conditions, you have to monitor. Spritzing helps, moisture helps with
keep
spider
air
mites.
circulating.
Ants, I don't know what to tell you. I've got ants. I found an ant on my computer in the living room the other day, a couple of them. I'm like, what?
See, that's what put the post up I was talking about, the ant.
That could be. The ant was like fingering on the keyboard. And I don't know why they're still here. Usually they disappear. We have ants in the summer. What are you going to do? It's like you have to be careful about leaving Legata's food bowl out. Try to raise it up if you can. If you remember, we actually do a moat, put the bowl in a moat so that the ants they don't swim very well and they can't get to the food. I get scale on my plants. I know that beautiful Cheflura, the 8-foot tall Cheflura, by the end of the winter is going to be covered in scale unless I take care of it regularly,
and the scale is there now. It's just
right. It just that's why I take them outdoors, because what happens is all the other predatory insects and rain and everything else come. The ants come, and by the time the summer is over, the scale is gone. I mean, that's my best way to treat scale is take a plant outdoors for the summer. But you bring them in, and then they're in this confined area. You could put a systemic pesticide in the container, and I don't have as much problem with systemics indoors as I do out, because it's in a container and it's not going anywhere. That's one way you can deal with things.
Judy Cole says she had a squirrel on her desk sorting mail.
Judy, how do you train them to do that? That's what I want to know. We get so much.
Can they read email?
Yeah. Alexandra says, repot your overwintering plants in sterilized pots and new soil. Don't bring in outdoor soil or fill dirty pots. Well, maybe that's you, Alexandra. I'm not repotting everything. No way. I'm not repotting anything. Well, maybe that's not true. There's usually at the end of the season, there's one or two. I have repotted a couple of new things, started some babies, and I repotted some things during the summer. I meant to repot more. It didn't happen. But no, I just sort of, I took some of them, put them in the basement, and quarantined them for a while, especially because I don't know about you guys, and I have said this for years. Fall is when the whiteflies come, and they're all over my yard every year. So you're going, what? And I've asked other people, and they say, well, I don't know, but I get whiteflies every fall, late summer, early fall, whiteflies everywhere. So I have to take the plants, I quarantine them in the basement, and then I go down there and I shake them. And if the whiteflies come out, you're staying down there for a while, and I do that until I hose them down before I put them in there too, and then shake them until there's no whiteflies coming off. Then I can bring them upstairs, and I have not had a whitefly problem in the house. But scale I get, ants. I think Alexandra's right. You bring in pots, some ants are going to be in them, and maybe that's what's going on. Snappy J Dog said they had a cat bowl moat too. And what else? Spray plants with a weak soap solution. Yep, you can do that. But the thing is, make sure you know what you're using it for. Identify the insect, identify the treatment, do it by label direction. Don't just spray because you can. Make sure you know what you're dealing with. Linda says whiteflies were bad this year. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Appreciate that. Spray mites with leftover COVID alcohol. I guess you'd have to be careful. You don't want to damage the leaves on the plant. And Linda says, I have a big black hornet nest in my backyard. Well, good for you. Good luck. Good luck with that. All right, we just have a few minutes. I did want to talk. We did mention we were going to talk a little bit about
COP26.
Yeah, is it COP, COP, whatever.
Conference of the Parties 26.
Right, exactly. And a lot of people don't know what the name. Oh, wait, we've got this. There we go. A lot of people don't know what the name stands for. It's Conference of the Parties. It's an annual meeting among signatories to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. All of you know that as the UNFCCC, right? I talk about that all the time. That's a joke. But the UNFCCC was established in 1992 to acknowledge the global threat of climate change and to begin the process of creating international agreements and responses to the threat. And part of the response was an annual conference of the parties, COP or COPE or COP, where the signatories of the UNFCCC, which is, that's a mouthful, would meet.
Yeah, you lost me here.
Well, no. So the response for
no, I'm saying too many acronyms. In other words.
right. There's only using two here: UNFCCC and COP, which is the Conference of the Parties. Anyway, the idea was to have an annual conference where the signatories would meet to review and plan the implementation of the convention. If you've been around a while, you might remember the Kyoto Protocol, which came out of COP 3 back in the day, 1997, was the first legally binding international treaty intended to implement the goal of combating dangerous, this is quotes, air quotes, dangerous human interference in the climate system. The problem was the United States was not part of that. I don't know if you remember, and that was Clinton administration. So we haven't been always a particularly good neighbor when it comes to climate change. And given that it continues, the carbon dioxide levels continue to rise over the past 20 years, 25, we're at COP 26 now. We haven't done a good job, and you know who's calling them out is Greta Thunberg.
Among thousands of others, yes.
Yeah. She was accusing them of blah, 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 blah. Actually, it was
we
blah,
can't
blah.
play her entire clip.
Blah, blah, blah. I would love no, because she dropped an F-bomb in the middle of that, too. Although I saw a clip on the Washington Post site, and they edited that out. I would like to have seen the F-bomb. I could find it if I looked for it. But
Actually, it was in the Washington Post clip.
well, not the one I saw. So, and there were 100,000 people. Well, they had the student march on Friday, and 100,000 people. That was apparently 25 on Friday, and 100,000 yesterday, marching. And
in Glasgow, Scotland.
In Glasgow, Scotland. Yeah.
Which is where it's taking place. And it's kind of interesting watching all the different groups. I think one of the articles that you had linked to off of the blog this week of just how many different groups, everybody coming together and just saying, it's got to be grassroots. It's got to be private groups and not just big companies and big industry and government.
Right. This is kind of what we were talking about with Brad Roos from Sustain Rockford. It's got to be personal will and political will. But without the political will, nothing is going to happen. And so among the decisions that have been made are to protect Earth's forests. But that has been done before. That's part of the problem. These folks say that
nothing happens.
Right. Yeah, the idea is the UK said it has received pledges from leaders representing more than 85% of the world's forests, including the US, to halt and reverse deforestation by 2030. Among them are Brazil. Think that's going to happen with Bolsonaro? Or I'm sorry, whatever.
Yeah, and
with that guy in charge, China, Colombia, Congo, Indonesia, Russia, and the United States. Even the United States. I shouldn't even say even. Do you think this Build Back Better plan with the climate change initiatives, $500 million, $500 million, think that's going to go through? Hope it does.
Yeah. Well, this is off of a PBS story. Some campaigners were distrustful of the motives of big investors in general. A quote, many of the financial institutions meeting today have made a killing from the climate and ecological crisis, and we should be deeply suspicious of any attempt to spin them as heroes, said Dorothy Guerrero, head of the policy at the non-governmental group Global Justice Now. Governments must regulate the process and lead the transition instead of just handing it over to corporations.
And on Tuesday, President Joe Biden, announced a plan to reduce methane. I was listening to a news report this morning on, Lumpen Radio before our show came on.
Where you can hear the Mike Nowak show at 8 a.m. on Sundays.
That's right. And the guy kept saying methane, and I was like, "Whothane? Methane." Okay. I've always known it as methane, but I could be wrong.
Ethane.
You're right. Ethane, methane, wethane. Anyway, there's a plan to reduce methane emissions. The overall methane emissions, they're hoping to reduce by 30% by 2030 by clamping down on methane flaring and leaks from oil wells and gas pipelines. It's considered that's the low-hanging fruit. But when you get to cattle and meat production, those people are not going to be happy with that if we cut back on our meat production. So it'll be interesting to see if we can even cap and fix the leaks in methane emissions. And one other thing, and by the way, I read about that years ago. Like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, I read a story about how methane all over the United States, there's so many pipes that are so old that just leak methane. And if you could just cap that, you would save a lot of gas. You would keep methane from going into the atmosphere. Natural gas, folks, remember, it ain't just natural gas, it's methane. But the other thing is about that some folks are arguing about is how undemocratic this is. In The Guardian, there was an article before it started that said COP26 will be the whitest and most privileged ever worn campaigners.
Thousands from frontline communities in Global South have been excluded, activists claim.
Yep. Where's the it says it was hard to get there because of COVID restrictions. It's expensive. So a lot of representatives from the Global South, which is now a phrase that's used a lot. Wait, I think that's Rick. I think that's Rick logging in. Let's see. Yeah. We'll pop the mic off.
What was that?
Oh yeah, there he is. Rick, we're going to be with you in a second. We got a break here. We're just discussing. In fact, I can pop that up. COP is, how do you pronounce it? Is it COP? Is it COPE? Is it COP26? What do you use?
COP26.
COP. Okay. So there we go.
Or as we said growing up in Queens, the police.
Some people, just in Queens. All right. We need to take a break.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. Rick DiMaio is there. We've got some weather and meteorology stuff coming up, and we'll even talk a little bit more about COP26. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We'll be right back.
From spring seed and soil treatments to summer foliar feeding to fall stubble digesters, Blazing Star provides microbial tools from tiny biologicals for natural and organic farmers. They have solutions for home gardeners too. And Blazing Star offers agroecological education and consulting, especially for permaculture work in zones 4 and 5. Learn more about these great folks at blazing-star.com.
We are your doctors.
You trust us.
You trust us.
You trust us.
You trust us.
You trust us with your life. You trust us with those you love.
So trust us when we say,
get vaccinated against COVID-19.
The vaccines are safe. They are proven to work.
You may have wanted to wait, I get it. But don't wait until it's too late.
Trust us.
Trust us.
Trust us.
Trust us.
You have the ability to give your soil a superpower. It's called composting. If you don't have a backyard, you need to contact Collective Resource Compost. CRC has diverted 7,000 tons of food scraps since 2010. They bring you a fresh 5-gallon bucket or a 32-gallon neighbor tote with each pickup. You fill it with organic matter from your kitchen, they swap it out and get it to a commercial composting operation. Fight climate change. Go to collectiveresource.us.
Life is an ocean, streaming alone, ripples of motion, healing us all. Yeah.
Dive in, your time to win. Our hearts all in. Let's let the fun begin. Take a dive, take a dive, take a dive. Take a dive, take a dive, take a dive. I see you diving dive. I see you climbing dive. I see you diving dive. Dive smart, dive smart, dive hard, dive hard, dive hard, dive hard, dive in, dive smart, dive smart, dive hard, dive hard, dive hard, dive hard.
Welcome back to the show, and there he is, meteorologist Rick DiMaio. I found the paragraph that I was looking for. It says, and this is again in the Guardian, the COP26 coalition, which represents indigenous movements, vulnerable communities, trade unionists, and youth strikers around the world, says that up to 2/3 of those it was helping it to travel to Glasgow have given up, overwhelmed by a combination of visa and accreditation problems, lack of access to COVID vaccines, and changing travel rules, as well as scarce and expensive accommodation. So unfortunately, that's also part of the whole thing. You've got, and this is what Greta Thunberg is railing against, the privileged people in the room making the decisions for the poor people of the world. And they I don't know, Rick, what are you seeing coming out of this? Have you are you encouraged by what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think the methane pledge is a good one. That's a good start. I think the fact that we're meeting this year compared to last year, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The fact that Biden is there, that's a good one. So I tend to focus on the larger positives. And I mean, in any large conference that, includes 196 countries, once you get down into the granular details, you're always going to find, that things are not going as well as they possibly could. But I'm just becoming a little bit more disheartened with Greta, because it just seems like she thinks that if you just say that you have to change things yesterday, that they're going to happen, and that's not how things work. And saying that privileged people are the ones that are the ones who are in charge. Unfortunately, that's how things work, because to become a privileged person, you need to pay your dues. You need to be part of the game for a while. And just because you're screaming and yelling and hold a sign doesn't mean you get to the front of the line. So I still think that, she's a great role model for a lot of young people around the world. But what I still don't see happening is the young people really walking the walk, even though they're talking the talk. They're still on their phones way too much. That uses, sending stuff to the cloud, that uses electricity. They're still ordering things from their phone through Amazon, and still taking Uber without thinking about whether or not that driver is driving a car that's a hybrid, as opposed to taking mass transportation. So, and I see it. I mean, I'm at a bunch of different schools, and as much as the students are in this, role of, maybe how people were, back in the 60s, where you get kind of caught up in the wave. In the end, you're doing things to make yourself comfortable. And this is one generation that surround themselves with comfort. So from that standpoint, I think if Greta wants to get upset, she needs to get upset not at the people in charge, but the people that she's trying to charge up.
Okay, well spoken. Appreciate that. So it continues, and it'll go. I forget how long it goes. It's
to the 12th.
To the 12th.
To the 12th.
All right, so that's this Friday. So we got a lot more to see coming out of that conference, and we'll see what happens. I want to show something here that you sent, which is very, very cool. This is September 6th along Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. And then the comparison to 2 months later, and
other than color, not much difference.
Yeah. We haven't built any buildings
less
since that
traffic.
time.
Less traffic. No, but what I'm saying is it's not, the trees aren't bare. It's 2 months.
Right.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, Peg. I'm actually out in Bolingbrook right now. I was at a wedding in Lamont last night, and we're heading over to the Morton Arboretum right after this. I'm
cool.
Really interested to see how the trees look at the Morton Arboretum, but it just seems that most of the trees have almost like a dead wood look to them. It's not really bright colors, but I may be surprised. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
I'm looking at a maple out my window that's pretty bright.
Yeah, the maples always seem to pull through, isn't that right, Peg? They always seem to be the ones that shine the most.
Maples, sweet gums have great color. There's enough, and actually, I have not been. I haven't gotten out too much, but from what I have seen, the color's been nice. I mean, it's not spectacular color, but it's
there's no brilliance, but especially late afternoon sun hitting the trees has been gorgeous.
Oh yeah, and I think you'll get that almost every year. You'll get that late afternoon sun pop up, and you go, "Wow, that looks pretty cool." So no, I'm not completely down on the fall colors, but I just noticed that it seemed to have been We've had better years in the past. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and the fall colors speak very highly of you, so you shouldn't disparage them. But if
People
you,
have good hair days, bad hair days. Trees have good leaf days.
that's
Good.
right.
Yeah,
And then
there you
there's
go.
good rain days and bad rain days, and this is a recent rainfall. Not a whole lot since last week was not this past week, but the week before. 5 inches.
Oh, yeah.
4 inches of
Yeah,
rain I had in my yard, and now not so much.
Yeah, and we'll continue that dry pattern as well. And if you still wanted to talk about the COP26 after we get through the weather, I'm all for it. I mean, I don't think we really addressed it as much as we could have, but we can get back to that if you want. But yeah, the rainfall that we've had, as we mentioned, was going to be light last week, and it'll be light this week up until we get to Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Well, we could pop back to that, but I'll tell you what. Let's go through this and see what we've got, and then at the end we'll have a little more time to talk about where that's headed. So, what is interesting about the Midwest map is this, which is the snowfall. That happened in the last few days.
Yeah, this was the backside of the cold air mass that came across the Great Lakes. We've talked about the fact that the lakes have been remarkably warm this fall, anywhere between 5 and as much as 7 degrees above normal. That'll come down pretty quickly. It always does. It's always the depth of the warmth that's always kind of more interesting to look at, as with any large body of water. But the temperatures that had come through were basically in the low to mid 30s. And when you have water temperatures in the mid 50s, all you really need is about a 15 to 20 degree difference between the surface and about 5,000 feet to generate clouds that can produce snow. What's interesting is that because the lakes were so warm, right along the shoreline, much of the snow was falling and melting because the air was coming off the water that was relatively warm. So you had to go inland a good 10 to 15, almost 20 miles for the air temperature to be not modified by the lake. And because of that, when you went inland across the northern part of the lower P and then the upper part or the northern part of the UP, the Keweenaw Peninsula itself, anywhere between 10 and 12 inches of snow. In fact, where the National Weather Service office is located, there's 4 of them in Michigan. There's one in Detroit, one in Grand Rapids, one in Gaylord. Actually, there's 5. There's one in Sault Ste. Marie, and also one in Marquette. The one in Gaylord had a record 11.3 inches of snow for November the 2nd, and that was a record for the month. They've never seen that much snow in the month of November. I know. And on top of that, it was early in the year. So these are some of the things that I always like to talk about, is that what you're going to see with the Great Lakes with a changing climate is much more variability, which is why you have to press that more than climate change. Because if you tell someone in Gaylord, Michigan, that the climate is warming, they're going to be like, I just shoveled 11 inches of global warming.
Snow.
Right. And the reason why we got so much snow was because we had a remarkably warm August, September, and October. So the first batch of cold air came through, said, you know what? I'm going to produce a lot of snow because I can. That's what the atmosphere does.
So, and speaking then of the warm lake temperatures, now a lot of the buoys are offline, so I wasn't able to check Wilmette, but the hottest water temperatures today, this is today, Benton Harbor is 57. At Zion, it's 56.3, and South Haven, Michigan is 56.3.
Yeah, and I think, Peg, those are reports at the entrance to the harbors. Am I correct?
I'm not entirely sure where it is.
Yeah, I think
49.8 in Green Bay. So
those
I'm
are
not sure
all
where
the
it is because the
temperatures at
buoys are
entrance.
offline.
Yeah, those are all entrance to the harbors because the buoys were retrieved just this past week. So you can actually go, I think, to either the National Weather Service office Twitter feed in Chicago or Milwaukee, and they showed the 2 buoys that Peg is referring to were being trailed or towed into the Wilmette Harbor. So now they're going to be in until March, which is kind of early, I think. I mean, I've seen them out there through early December, so I don't know why they're doing it earlier this year.
I know Wilmette was pulled too,
So the numbers that you're referring to are the harbors. It doesn't mean that that's not the temperature of the lake. But again, when you have really, really warm lakes, in a normal year, this probably wouldn't have been lake effect snow. It would have been lake effect clouds. But the fact that it's warmer allowed the clouds to build more vertically. So instead of getting just some flurries, you ended up getting literally tall clouds up to 20,000 feet as opposed to 15. So it's always important to talk more about the possibilities of what happens with a highly variable climate. And that's exactly what happened, 11 inches of lake effect snow.
Yeah, one thing I just want to show you. Gaylord. Yeah, it's not. This happens from time to time. Okay.
Yeah, so if you go to the next couple of pictures, they were really cool.
Well, I wanted to say something until the echo came, and now it's gone away. That's good. It's Gaylord. I have fond memories of Gaylord because growing up in Michigan, in Detroit area, we would often vacation in the lower peninsula or the upper peninsula. And we'd stop at Gaylord. There was a favorite hamburger spot my
Really?
folks would take us to in Gaylord. So it was like, yeah, it's like, okay, we're going to have lunch in Gaylord. That was always like the destination. And then we'll continue our journey north. So I'm thinking of them with 12 inches of snow, whatever they had. That's crazy stuff. All right.
Last gas station on 75 for a long time. Yep.
Right. You got to gas up before you get over the bridge because it's there's a lot of miles there before you get to the Upper Peninsula.
It is really interesting, that part of the northern lower peninsula. We need to come up with like a name for that, like Nulupa or something like that. But yeah, once you get north of Gaylord, there's not much. It's just kind of flat and open territory, unless you're going to the west side where you have Traverse City, Charlevoix, Sleeping Bear Dunes State Park, or the other side. But yeah, that's a really, really pretty part of the state, but also very wide open as well.
All right, what map did you want me to go to next here?
Well, no, there were some photographs there if you wanted to show
yeah. Let me do this. You're probably talking about this one.
Well, that's the satellite view. But if you got the ones from the trees, so what oftentimes happens when you get early season lake effect snow, if the trees have still a lot of leaves on them, you get a lot of tree damage.
Yeah,
so there was a lot of trees that came down in this, and also, I remember the heaviest lake effect snow in the history of Buffalo, New York, was actually in October. Actually, no, that was the second one. The largest one was the one that occurred a few years ago. But they had like literally 30 inches of snow because the lake was so warm and it got really cold, and they had tremendous tree damage. So again, these are the kind of things that you need to talk about in a scientific way so that people don't say, but I thought you said it was going to be like this. If I had $1 for every time someone told me that about the weather, I'd be a millionaire. So that's why meteorologists will always kind of give somewhat of a conditional statement with the really tough forecast that goes out, for 5 days. If someone says, "Hey, I heard we're going to get, a big snow next week." I mean, even when I was in Loyola last week, Kevin Erickson, the person who runs the garden, said, "That was really interesting stuff you sent on the frost and freeze. When do you think our next frost or freeze is going to be?" And I gave him a whole thing, blah, 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 blah. And I said, "Okay, Kevin, remember, this is as of today. Okay, as of today, this is what I think." And sure enough, they were able to cover up most of their plants last week. We still have not had a freeze along the lakefront. And when I walked past, Mike, you know the garden I'm talking about, right, at Loyola's campus?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there on Kenmore and Loyola. It's a beautiful, city garden.
Right.
They still had all of their kale and their red-green lettuce still thriving. And I think it's probably still doing that today. Maybe a little bit wilted because it did get cold, but we still have not yet had a freeze along the lakefront, which is remarkable.
In my yard, the tomato plants finally pretty much collapsed, but everything else, it looks as if nothing has happened yet. So
right. And now we have 65 degrees today.
Let's look at the upcoming. Here's the rainfall forecast, and it looks substantial, but it's not because the blue is not heavy rain, really, is it?
Yeah, and this is all going to come most likely Friday into Saturday, even Thursday. I shouldn't say that. This is more so like Thursday night. So this is really through This is the next 7 days, but I sent you 2 maps, which was a 5-day. The 5-day keeps us dry right through Wednesday.
Yeah,
And then
I didn't put that up there because there was nothing happening on it, so I thought I'd cut to the chase here.
Right, but the reason why I sent you the 5 is to show over the next 5 days is nothing, and then it's really day 6 and 7 that we actually have some rain. So as nice as it is now, 60 to 65 today, it's going to be in the mid 30s next Saturday and Sunday. So we're literally going back to almost like early October, and then almost, well, more like mid-October, and then going into mid-November. But again, this time of the year, I always said you get into that second or third week in November, and you get some really, really wild swings. And the best thing about today being that it's a Sunday is that the Bears are not playing today, so I don't have any worries to be inside watching TV and feeling miserable. They don't play until tomorrow night.
Well, it's a good thing because they won't lose today. That's always a good thing. All right, here's the jet stream today. Now this is fascinating. These jet stream maps that you sent. This is today, and you can see why we're warming up with the flow coming out of the southwest.
Yep, and you get this big ridge pushing in. So even though we're in the low to mid 60s, we're in the mid 70s from Texas on up into Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, even eastern Colorado, who's already had a couple of bouts of snow, is in the mid 70s today. But that little low off the coast there may actually try to produce a tropical storm, even though winds right now are over 30, 40 miles per hour, which would qualify it as a tropical. It's really not, because it's what we call a baroclinic low. In other words, it's formed off the difference of 2 air masses. All it's doing right now is it's developing a little bit further, or at least more intense, due to the fact that it's moving basically over the Gulf Stream. So there are 50 to 60 mile an hour winds wrapped around the center of that. There's some incredible, like 5 to 6 foot storm surge going on in parts of, I think, Charleston Harbor, around Myrtle Beach, and then up into Wilmington as well. So there's flood advisories and flood warnings, not only for rain, but also coastal flooding as well. And then as you look at the next one, that big trough out west literally digs right into the upper Great Lakes. And typically on the front side of these big lows is where you get your surface low pressure. So the surface low pressure is going to be like literally over like northwestern Ohio. And with that said, there's going to be a huge push of Gulf of Mexico moisture into the southeast. There could actually be some flooding rains and even some severe weather, basically from New York through Pennsylvania down through the Virginias on the backside. Very windy and very, very chilly weather on Friday into Saturday here. But then the next map actually shows that second area of strong winds on the backside re-deepen this low and pushes it a little bit further south. And this is where I think we'll probably see our first snow of the season. So this is for November 16th. So now there's going to be a secondary low that's going to form pretty much over like eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina. And this is going to produce another significant, probably severe weather outbreak for the deep south and southeast. Tornadoes galore with this type of setup. But on the backside, very, very strong winds, cold air, and probably snow. So yesterday, today, tomorrow, and probably maybe into Tuesday, we may see temperatures in the 60s, although Tuesday we may get a wind off the lake, so I don't think it's going to be as nice. But this is definitely the last 2 or 3 days of, I think, weather that you can go out and enjoy the fall foliage, because we all know 2 things end the fall foliage season: the leaves completely losing their color altogether, or the wind blowing them off the trees. And most likely by next Saturday, most of the leaves will probably be blown off the trees. So this is really good stuff today.
Yeah, and this is the map for what you say might be a storm on the 16th and 17th of November, which would be a week. Let's see, next Sunday is the 14th. So yeah, then
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, not this coming week, but the following week.
Right, the following week. And this looks like, without a doubt, it's going to be another one where you'll get, 40, 50 mile an hour winds all the way down the length of the lake. It's going to be more of an Indiana, Michigan type scenario, because when the lows develop that way, the wind comes in from the north and west. But this is going to be significant from a standpoint of probably producing our first snow of the season, from a standpoint of you can see the flakes to a trace on the ground to actually maybe even inch of snow. So typically you get your first few flakes around the 15th or so of November. The first trace generally around like the 25th to 26th, and then generally your first inch right around the 1st or 2nd of December. We may get it all at once with this. It's still a little bit too far east for significant snow for us, but it definitely looks windy and much, much colder around here next Saturday, next Friday, next Saturday, and definitely next Sunday.
Yeah. There's that echo again. As you mentioned, there is going to be dry weather for the next several days, but then, so let's take us to Thursday. I popped this is the Thursday map for this week.
Yeah, and this is really where it's getting into it's really tapping into the Gulf of Mexico moisture. So there's going to be a lot of rain with this. You know, you can easily have temperatures upper 50s from the evening all the way, or from the daytime all the way through the evening and the next day. And you get that a lot this time of year. You wake up in the morning, it's like a 50-mile or 50-degree temperature, 50-degree dew point, and it's just windy and wet. You know, we've kind of learned how to adapt to those. But then the system pulls off to the east, and then on the backside is when you start to get, you know, the cold air. So the Great Lakes, one of the interesting things about the Great Lakes also is if you look at just the shape of Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and Lake Huron, you can almost put your hands around them. And oftentimes we've seen this in mid-November. You can get these storms as they begin to stall. They'll feed off the warmth of the Great Lakes. There was a famous storm, I think it was back in the early 90s. They call it the Lake Huron hurricane, and it literally had an eye to it. And you can actually see the way the storm literally formed over Lake Huron and parts of eastern Lake Superior, similar to how they form off the east coast of the United States. So the warmth of the Great Lakes will actually add to the development of these storms if they do stall. This one will probably
Gales
be
of
in
November.
Yeah, the gales of November, absolutely.
November 10th was the Edmund Fitzgerald. So
November the 10th. And that particular storm itself, same thing, where you literally had the storm kind of like sit over the Great Lakes. So the Great Lakes do some really interesting things to us when they are warmer than the rest of the environment. Usually in the summertime, the difference of temperature between the lakes and the year isn't too much. When you start to see the difference of temperature in October, November, weather patterns do some pretty interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the 6 to 10 day temperatures here.
These maps are okay only because they'll capture a trend, but they won't really capture, you know, singular events. So because this is going through the 15th, where it's going to capture 2 days of cold weather, it takes the 3 days of warm weather and it averages out. So you don't really see our warmth in this. If you do like a 2 day, that's probably a better way of looking at it, because weather systems become much more transient this time of the year. These maps can be a bit misleading sometimes. Only unless you stay within the confines of strong southwest flow, which is what the desert Southwest in California is going to be in, will generally be in a cooler pattern. So again, when you stretch out any sort of time period, it misses the high degree of variability. So I'm not a real fan of these maps when you get into the more active fall season or the more active spring season. But one thing is for sure, our pattern over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks looks very, very active. And it's becoming more and more like it wants to become a pure La Nina pattern, because now we've cooled off we've cooled off the Gulf of Alaska quite a bit. So the doors are open for anything that comes in from the Gulf to have a lot more cold air on the back side of it. So again, when you see this is what a normal La Nina pattern looks like, which is the cooler and normal temperatures from South America all the way over to the date line, and that's about 7,000 miles. that allows, or at least it hinders the ability for tropical ITCZ, intertropical convergence zone moisture, to influence the subtropical jet. So the subtropical jet begins to subside, it weakens, and the systems coming across from the northern Pacific get a little bit less resistance as they move into the United States. I still don't see anything coming from the West Pacific, which is where you would see your typhoons. That's always the wild card this time of the year. But being that that's not happening, it's probably going to be more of a normal transition to a much more active pattern.
Yeah.
So again, you always have to back up long-term predictions with short-term analysis. And the area from the date line on the left side of the map, right along the equator there, those blue little squiggly lines, you go down to the bottom, and that shows that the water temperature is about 2 or 3 degrees centigrade below normal. And then you go to the details on the bottom and go all the way to the right, and it shows you that the equatorial Pacific is basically at normal. And then you go to the North Atlantic, and that's 1 degree centigrade above normal. So you see all the red, so that's 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. So much of the North Atlantic is pretty mild, but much of that area along the equator, that's where La Nina is developing. So when you look at that area and then you look at satellite information, it all kind of makes sense that when you start to see this developing, anything that's beginning to come in across the northern tier of the Cascades and into the Rocky Mountains pretty much has a clear shot.
Okay, well, guess what? We're out of time. So, well, more COP20. Well, it'll be finished next week, and then we can take a look at the results of the entire conference and see what good is coming out of it. I like your idea of trying to remain positive, although we have to be aware that there are negatives to come out of it as well, given that this is a 26th year we're trying to do this, and what has been accomplished. I just saw a report that said following the COVID year, it looks like we're going to pump more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than ever. That's not good.
Yeah. And again, my lecture to my Loyola students last week and this Monday shows the variation in carbon dioxide last year and how it went down by about 9% and how it came right back up. But what you could really do, and we can talk more about that next week, and I'll share maps with you, it also shows you how the different countries went up as well. As soon as the restrictions were lifted in China, they went back up. As soon as the restrictions were lifted here in the United States, they went back up. And then it came right back down again last November when we had that secondary surge. So it shows you that CO2 emissions can come down very quickly. However, it takes the atmosphere a lot longer to expunge that.
Yeah.
And the bottom line was the global CO2, what's in the global CO2 is different from the emissions. So we emitted less, but the global CO2 was still basically where it's been for the last 40 years, nowhere but going up. And that's a key point that a lot of people have to remember. Just because you turn off the heat, it doesn't mean that the temperature in the kitchen goes down right away. It's still pretty warm.
All right, give us a quick forecast. You've kind of done that already, but let's recap.
Yeah, we'll tabulate here. So 60 to 65 today, normal high is 52. Mid-60s probably tomorrow as well. And then a little bit cooler as the wind kind of relaxes from the south. That'll give us a lake breeze on Tuesday. But still, morning lows the next 2 days are going to be about 20 degrees warmer than they were last week. That's key. So if we were in the mid-20s last week in the burbs, and now we'll be in the mid-40s, that makes the day a lot much more enjoyable because sunset today is at 4:47.
Ah.
I know, a stark reality to standard time. Light rain Thursday, heavier rain on Friday, and then when we talk next week, temperatures will be in the mid-30s. It'll be a much, much different weekend.
Well, the good news was that when I woke up, there was light outside today.
Trust me, the 7:30 sunrise on Thursday morning was not easy for my class that begins at 7:30 at Lewis.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! All right, Rick. Thanks. Enjoy the wedding. And by the way, save that internet service you've got there, because that is better than the one you have at home. I mean, really.
By the way, guys, do you see roses here?
Yep. Wow.
That's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad. That's I'm in Bolingbrook right now, and the fact that those roses look pretty good, even out here in Bolingbrook, shows you that even though it was cold, there's still some life left to the plants, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
depending on how severe a freeze we get, some of them might survive for another week. Who knows?
And they're still buds, and they're trying to come out. So hopefully they'll still give them a little bit of juice, right?
Yeah. Don't prune your roses now. By the way, don't prune them. It only sends a signal that they're supposed to send out more growth, and they will not appreciate that when it gets cold. So
I'll let the pruner know that right away.
okay. Thanks, Rick. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.
All right. I
Bye,
believe.
Mike. Bye, Peg.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's get out of here. Our thanks to everybody who was on the show today. Dr. Allan Armitage, and you can take a look at his book. There it is, Tales of Big John and Other Creatures. Thanks to Brad Roos from Sustain Rockford. Don't forget that you can be part of the GreenTown Rockford Conference this Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thanks to meteorologist Rick DiMaio, to Kathleen on the other side of the planet, wherever, to Lagata and Basil. And until next time, go green or
go home.
Stadler?
Yeah, what?
Is that it?
Yes, it's over. How'd you like it?
I don't know. I slept through the whole thing.
Well, you didn't miss much.